moving on, just because we have a lot of great questions to get to. So Neil, what is a data protection impact assessment, a DPIA?
Yes, essentially, basically the GDPR deems that certain types of processing of personal data can be highly risky. And because of that, GDPR requires any data controller processor which will be processing personal data that will give rise to serious risk. And what that means is risk to the rights and freedoms of the relevant individuals or the data subjects. They have to carry out what's called this data protection impact assessment, or its acronym DPIA. So, for example, if you have a health insurance company which processes data on the health condition of members, before that company can actually start the data processing process, they have to carry out a data impact assessment to essentially highlight any risks, what would happen if, let's say, there was a data breach, that kind of thing. And also, it's important to mention that a data protection impact assessment is required if new technology is involved in collecting and processing the data. So, for example, you could have a situation where personal data is being collected by means of, let's say, fingerprint or face recognition technology. And it's very important to note that the data protection impact assessment must be carried out before the actual processing takes place. And if the DPIA actually reveals that there would be risks, the supervisory authority has to be contacted. And there has to be a certain degree of interaction with the relevant supervisory authority. So it's a very important requirement of GDPR.
Incredible. And I know that, Guy, you also had some points on DPIA to contribute to too, but I think we're having some audio issues on his end, so we'll definitely weigh in when we come around to that question in the following section there.
I think I'm back.
Perfect, there we go. It's,
goodness me, at last. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Guy. Great that you could get the audio on board there. Apologies for the technical issues. Please, I know that you have expertise around DPIA as well. Would you have anything to add to Neil's answer?
So, I think the one thing that's really interesting is that the GDPR goes into significant detail about its expectations around the DPIA. So, some of the big hype these days around data science is about scoring and profiling individuals and automatic decision making. Well, certainly, and I mean, there's certainly at least 6 or 7 or 8 other categories of requirements that are listed there. But one of the things is that if you're planning on doing any of these kinds of activities involving personal data, then certainly a DPIA is an absolute requirement. And in fact, I might want to step away from the issue of requirement and rather move it to a conversation about risk, risk identification and risk control. If you look at it as a requirement, it becomes hard and, oh man, my goodness me, I've got to do this and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of issue. It's rather a matter of, if it's about the rights and freedoms of data subjects, let's rather properly identify what those risks are and ensure that we have the right controls in place to actually manage those risks. I think what's important also is that, the GDPR does raise that you may need to raise some of these issues with your data protection officer, and we'll speak about this a little bit later. But it's important that anything, and I think Neil did mention this, anything that you identify as particularly high risk and that you potentially can't mitigate, that you must consult the Information Commission, goodness me, I've lost it now, ICO, Information Commissioner's Office, there we are, sorry, before starting the processing. And the thing is also then not to proceed with processing before you've received written confirmation from the ICO, if that's the extent of the risk that you've actually evaluated.
Wow. That's some great insight. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.